What's up, everybody? Today I want to give you a full summary of What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. Super exciting thriller book. Please be advised, this video contains all the spoilers, so if you have an interest of picking this up, reading it for yourself, I encourage you to skip to the next video because I'm going to divulge everything. Well, I like to say everything, but I'd like to divulge the key points in this book, so it's going to give you an experience as if you had read it. You'll be able to participate in your book club conversations, but really, I'm going to do the best I can to give you a well-rounded summary of this book. I say it like that because there is a lot going on in this book. It's 319 pages of just craziness, so I hope to do it justice. I'm going to give you the main key points, but this book, seriously, 5 out of 5 stars. Came out earlier this year, January 2023. It's actually this author's debut adult thriller novel, so don't let that deter you. She did a phenomenal job. Now, this might be her first adult book that she has written, or her first adult thriller book, but she has written other works. I think they're catered more towards young adult, but she did a phenomenal job. I cannot say that enough. I was captivated the entire time. I freaking loved it. So I'm gonna do the best I can, but just bear with me because there's so much that goes on in this book that I possibly can't cover all of it, but I will do the very best I can. If you have read the little synopsis on the inside cover of this book, you will know that our main character's name is Naomi Shaw. She actually changes her name later on in the book to Naomi Cunningham, and the reason for that is because she was trying to leave a past behind. We'll get into that more a little bit later, but she had 2 best friends growing up. When they were 11 years old, they would play in the woods, and they had such creative, imaginative minds. It's so cute, it's so charming, and you can't help but put yourself in that position. At least for me, I could really relate to that because I remember playing in the backyard and making up crazy games and building forts and stuff and all this and that. So you just have to admire the magic that they believe in at such a young age, and they are so committed to their games. And when they're 11, they come up with this game. It's called The Goddess, and it gets a little out of hand, but on one particular day when they're playing, oh my goodness, our main character Naomi gets stabbed. She's attacked and stabbed 17 times. Can you freaking imagine? But she ends up surviving, and she wakes up in a hospital bed just riddled in holes in her body, and she's able to identify the person who did this to her. In the very beginning of the book, she admits to lying, and so we don't know the extent of this lie. Was she lying about the person who actually hurt her? Was she lying about something else? We don't really know. We're given a very basic overview of what the story is about, and then everything starts to unfold page by page. It's crazy, wild, loved it. I hope you did as well. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this book. Please tell me. If you hated it, also please tell me because I'm curious as to why. However, everyone has their own opinion. You're totally entitled to it. I totally appreciate it. But for me, I just love this one, and I couldn't find anything that I really hated about it. You will see that our main character is not perfect, but I think that's important because it makes them relatable. People are messy and we're not perfect, and as much as we want to read about a heroine who is just maybe the epitome of every hero, what they're supposed to be, we just don't get that in this book. Our main character Naomi is very, very flawed, but it makes her very real, at least to me. So she gets stabbed 17 times, wakes up in the hospital, identifies the man that allegedly did this to her, and it's now 22 years later, and the man that she accused of stabbing her has now passed away in prison. He is now gone. It makes the news. This is kind of what initiates the 3 of them, again, 22 years later, to come back and to kind of pick up the pieces. They're having mixed feelings about it, especially our main character, because she is feeling guilty that he died in jail, knowing that he potentially is not the one that did this to her. So she was actually coached by the police in her hometown and was essentially told that AJ is the one that did this to her, although her memory is super faulty, and you cannot blame her for that because the girl was stabbed 17 times. Like, I can imagine no, I can't even imagine the trauma of that. But of course her memory is going to be faulty. She doesn't really recall everything that happened, but her two best friends did identify AJ as the person that hurt her. So she has no reason to disbelieve them. So she kind of goes along with it, but something is not sitting well with her. It's not resting easy. So she gets back into town. She meets up with her two friends, which, by the way, one of them is Cassidy Green. They call her Cass. The other one is Olivia. They call her Liv. Now, Liv is an interesting character. She is very much traumatized by what happened in her childhood, and she tries extremely hard to get over it, but there are a lot of pieces of her life that she is trying to put back together, and she struggles. She really struggles with, I don't know if it's depression, anxiety, maybe a mixture of things. There was an incident 8 years prior to this event, prior to AJ passing away, where she actually tried to hurt herself. It caused alarm on a grand scale with her parents, her family, friends, all of that. So Liv is a character that we're definitely worried about. Emotional and mental stability, not feeling so good about that with Liv. But Cass, on the other hand, she's kind of known as the fixer. She is the one that kind of helps put everyone together when they suddenly are broken and falling apart, and she's really the glue that keeps them all together, keeps them healthy, keeps them alive and well. So they end up meeting up, and Liv has this idea in her head that we need to tell the truth. Now, this statement kind of catches our other two characters off guard, meaning Naomi and Cass. They're reluctant and resistant at first, but Naomi is actually kind of coming around to the fact of, yes, this secret needs to come out. So they start mentioning a Persephone, which at first you're like, who the heck is that? Liv is saying that she found Persephone, and we're like, who the heck is Persephone? Turns out these little girls found a body in the woods. Don't get me wrong, it was long, like, decomposed. It was just a skeleton of a body, but they're 11. They didn't really know what to do with that, so thus is born the goddess game, where they kind of treat the bones as like a relic. They see her as kind of this figure that they need to please, as a goddess that they need to please. And so they start performing rituals, they bring her flowers, they start trying to create like their own little game out of it and saying that this is what would please the goddess, and they would bring her things. Maybe it was something stolen, maybe it was stones, maybe it was flower petals, all this and that. And this body is kind of tucked under this big rock that has a little cave underneath. It's very small, but they were playing one day, and it turns out, you'll see this theme in the book a lot, but our main character Naomi is having a fight with Cass. Their personalities clash quite a bit. She runs off, slips under this rock, and is trying to hide, and finds the body. So instead of saying anything, these girls make a game out of it, and they start calling her Persephone, and the goddess that they need to please, and in order to bring them luck. And so they spend a lot of time just doing these crazy rituals. It's hard to blame them. They're kids. Should they have said something? Yeah, probably. But, you know, you go back to 11 years old, it's like, what the heck would you do? And by the way, this experience is kind of what unhinges Liv a little bit, at least in my opinion, because this is kind of traumatic, and she's thinking that this is normal and that her friends are pushing her, specifically Cass is pushing her to perform these rituals to please the goddess. And so Liv, when they come back after all these years, AJ is now dead, died in prison, she says, we need to tell the truth. I found Persephone. And at first, Cass is kind of being a stinker about it. She's like, what do you mean you found her? We know where she is. We've always known where she is. But what Liv means is she meant she found out who she was. Now, this catches our main character Naomi off guard a little bit, because she's thinking, oh my gosh, now we have a responsibility. These are no longer bones. These are no longer remains of just somebody, anybody. This belongs to an actual person. So Naomi is coming around to the fact, yeah, we need to say something, but Cass is really resistant. She's not liking that. She says, okay, let's take a breather. Let's talk about it more. We need to understand the repercussions and the consequences of saying this, because we've kept this dirty secret for 22 years. What does that mean for us? Cass at this point has a little girl that she's also trying to protect. And so they have this discussion. They say, hey, let's think on it. We'll circle back around to it. It's not a no, but let's talk about it. Let's think about it. So Naomi ends up driving Liv back to her parents' place, which is where she's resided for a long time, just because she doesn't really have the emotional or mental capacity to really be on her own. Naomi notices that Liv is not really responding very well to the fact that they weren't on board with talking about finding Persephone and disclosing who she is. And Naomi's trying to get a better feel for how Liv is doing. She can obviously tell she's struggling, but overall, Naomi thinks she's gonna be okay. And they have this saying, this little mantra that they do where they say, hey, see you tomorrow. And the other one will kind of say something to the effect of, I'll be here. Meaning, I'm not going to do anything stupid. I'm not going to hurt myself. Even though life is so hard, I will be here. So they say that to each other like normal. Now, Naomi, she is really bothered by the fact that they now know who this person is, who Persephone is. And so she ends up getting drunk, which she shouldn't have done. She meets up with an old childhood friend. His name is Cody. Cody is actually her savior. When she was found in the woods, stabbed 17 times, Cody is the one that picked up her broken body, ran her to the ambulance, and essentially kind of saved her life. And so she's always seen him as a hero. Now, Cody has actually done more for her than that. If I haven't mentioned it before, Cass has a pretty evil older brother. His name is Oscar. We do not like Oscar. He is a mean SOB. So back in the day when Naomi is really young, she's still 11, there were stories about Oscar taunting her and essentially molesting her, which he downplays it as a joke, which is super sick. He's just not a nice guy. He had cornered her one day, pushed her up against a building, stuck his hand under her shirt, was trying to feel her up. And once again, Cody intervenes. And so this was actually before the stabbing, of course, but Cody comes in, he rips Oscar off of her, he starts just pummeling the dude and just says, what the heck is wrong with you? This girl is 11 years old. You do not need to be touching her like that. So we like Cody so far. We like Cody so far because everything that he's done for Naomi has been as a savior, as somebody who obviously really cares about her. When Naomi meets up with Cody, they're at a bar. He actually doesn't drink very much, but she does. She gets out of hand. They start reminiscing. She realizes that she's always had a crush on Cody. She finds herself attracted to him. She really likes his personality, but he is married, and I think he has 3 kids. He has several kids and one more on the way. And there's a moment where he drops her back off at her motel. She's actually staying at a motel because she's not on great terms with her father. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but she's staying at a hotel rather than staying with her father. And Cody drops her off, and she almost like insinuates that she wants him to come in, and she could tell that he's just not interested and he wants to call his wife. And she even makes the comment of, you're not tempted a little bit, are you? And he kind of just brushes it off. He leaves. She's not done partying for the night, so she goes down to the corner store where the cashier hooks her up with a bottle of something. I forget if it's rum or whatever the heck it is, but she gets rip-roaring drunk and for whatever reason goes back into the woods back to where she experienced all those horrible things. And she stumbles out of her car, goes into the woods, and in her drunken state, she's pretty sure that she sees somebody or hears somebody in the woods. When she looks over, it's just a shadow figure that she's seeing. And so she ends up taking off running, stumbling back to her car, getting back into her car, and just passing out until morning. In the morning, she is confronted with the police officer of the town. Actually, it's the chief officer of the town. And she rolls down the window, and the chief's like, hey, what are you doing here? And she's like, oh, sorry. So obviously, this seems suspicious, right? Totally suspicious. What we haven't figured out yet is that Liv has gone missing. Since the time that our main character Naomi has seen Liv, she is now missing. So she will not answer calls, but she did leave a very concerning voicemail for Naomi, and Naomi was too drunk to even recognize that she had called. And Olivia says something to the effect of, I'm sorry, I'm sorry I lied, I'm sorry I can't do this, something like that. So Naomi is very concerned, super anxious about, oh my gosh, did Liv do something stupid? Did something happen to her? She immediately goes to Cass and says, hey, we need to find Olivia. So of course, they check her parents' house, she's not there, they said that she hasn't been home for a while, so they end up going into the woods. Now, Cass, she actually trips over a root or something, twists her ankle, claims she can't go any further. She says, hey, you keep looking for Liv, keep looking. I'm gonna go back to the car. I'm gonna get my ankle wrapped up and like call me as soon as you hear or see or figure anything out. And Naomi's like, okay, cool. And she battles internally for a moment thinking, okay, I feel like a terrible friend because I should be looking for Liv, but my other friend is injured. I should obviously go with her and help her out. In the end, she goes to find Liv. Now, before she gets any further, she stumbles upon this character. His name is Ethan. Now, she had a brief encounter with Ethan when she was having a drink with Cody at the bar. Ethan is a podcaster. He's not necessarily a exclusively true crime podcaster, but he's a podcaster. And Cody actually walked in while he was actually on the phone and took a break outside. But when he came back in, Ethan was talking to Naomi, kind of trying to get a story out of her, which really irks Cody. And so Cody yanks him up, throws him out, says, hey, don't bother her. Don't let it happen again. So now Naomi's stumbling through the woods looking for Liv, and here's this Ethan guy, which is super suspicious, right? At least I thought so. And so he says, hey, you know, I didn't mean to ambush you. He has this habit of sneaking up on her on accident. And Naomi can't help but kind of find the guy a little bit charming. He's obviously very handsome, and he tells her straight up, hey, do I want a story? Yes, but, you know, I also want to make sure that you're okay. And you know, he's just more curious about her story. So he ends up trailing behind her as she's looking for Liv. Believe it or not, they find Liv in a pond dead. And so it looks like she had drowned in the pond, which at this point in the story, we don't know if she committed suicide or if somebody had done harm to her. So without even thinking twice about it, Naomi goes rushing into the pool, starts trying to haul her out. Can't really believe that she's passed, but she's obviously been there for a long time. Olivia is no more. And so Ethan ends up jumping in, tries to help her pull her out. Now, this is a complicated situation for a lot of reasons. The chief police officer saw her at the, not necessarily at the scene of the crime, but she was in the woods, passed out, drunk earlier this morning. Now she's the one to find the body. So now they're pulling her in for questioning. And so obviously Naomi is a little bit shocked that she's even considered a suspect because Liv was obviously battling with some emotional issues, and the automatic assumption is that she hurt herself. But the more Naomi thinks about it, she considers, no, we just had a conversation. It doesn't make sense. They had altered her medication to where it didn't make her react in suicidal ways. They had finally found a really nice balance for her medication, and she's thinking, well, we had made plans to tell the truth. And so the more she thinks about it, she does not believe that Olivia killed herself. So thus initiates this investigation where she wants to find out, number one, who Persephone is, and obviously number two, what the heck happened to Olivia. So from here, the police can't hold Naomi. They don't have any evidence that she did harm to her friend, but the truth is, you would think that Olivia drowned in the pond. She was actually shot through the head, and they start asking if Naomi owns any firearms, which she does, but they're all the way back, you know, in her other town that she currently lives in. She doesn't have it on her. And so she's horrified because Liv was not a violent person. If she were to hurt herself, it would not be via a gun. So at least that's what Naomi believes. Naomi ends up working with Ethan to try to figure out what happened. So the useful part about Ethan is he is a podcaster for true crime. So he introduces her to this database of all these women that went missing around a certain time period. So she wants to start there because Liv says that she found Persephone. So she's wondering, okay, well, how did she find her? So she's pulling up all these missing women reports, and nothing immediately stands out to her, but through enough investigation and with the help of Ethan, they do figure out who Persephone is, but now they want to understand what happened to her. So this is where it gets crazy, okay? There are a couple instances where Naomi notices that she is being followed. Later on, they find out that somebody had contracted a personal investigator to kind of keep an eye on her. At this point in the story, we don't know why, but she does notice, and I do applaud her for that, because she's noticing when she's driving, she sees this black Toyota. It's either a Corolla or a Camry behind her, and she notices it. And even somebody else, as she's pulling off at a rest stop, somebody else, a truck driver, stops her and says, hey, I don't want to alarm you, but somebody's following you. So it's pretty blatant. This personal investigator isn't really that good. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you who Persephone is. Her name is Jessie Walker. So Naomi, along with Ethan, are trying to figure out who this Jessie Walker is, what is her past like, why did she end up dead, who did this to her. And so they talk to a lot of townsfolk, her dad included, which, by the way, I haven't talked much about her dad, but her dad is kind of a hoarder. He hoards junk, to the point where his living conditions are really uninhabitable, which is why she's not staying with him. He's kind of a terrible father. No, he's not kind of. He's a terrible father. He was really neglectful of her as she was growing up, so it was kind of a good thing that she had these really great friends who would take her in and stuff when her father was being negligent. They talk to her father. They find out that this Jessie Walker, she was only in town very briefly, but apparently she was this incredibly charming girl. Every person that she encountered, they really just wanted to get to know her. If they were male, they wanted to date her. We find out that Oscar really had a thing for her. It hints that he kind of fell in love with her. We also find out that Cody also really loved her. And we also find out that Cass's father, who is the mayor, by the way, also fell in love with this Persephone person who, well, is now dead, but was Jessie Walker. Now, they had a crazy affair, this Jessie and Cass's father, the mayor. So they had this affair. Jessie was led to believe that the mayor was going to leave his wife so that way they could live out their life together. Now, things went terribly, terribly wrong when she discovered that the mayor was never going to leave his wife. Number one, probably because of a reputation preservation. He didn't want to emanate that image of himself to the public, so he ended up kind of cutting the ties with her, and she did not react kindly to that. Naomi goes back and forth so many times. At first she thinks it's the mayor that killed Jessie, then she thinks it's Oscar that kills Jessie. Naomi goes back into the woods. At this point in time, this is another crazy twist. We find out that Ethan is actually not who he says he is. He actually changed his name, as in the person who took the fall for stabbing Naomi 17 times. This is his son. So his son, Ethan, he never meant for it to go as far as it did, but he wanted to get to know Naomi only to discover the truth. He's honestly not mad that his father was put away. He was scared of his father. He knew his father was a bad, bad person, and he was okay, but he just wanted to understand why. So Naomi finds this out because Cass's father, the mayor, does some background on him, because Cass is concerned that her best friend is spending so much time with this podcaster. And so the mayor is able to find out, okay, well, he was originally Alan Stahl Jr. before he changed his name to Ethan. So Naomi is just beside herself. She cannot believe that she was fooled once again. And so she ends up writing him off, says, go away. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to see you. And you can tell Ethan feels bad about it. You can kind of tell that he is a very different man than his father. Naomi is kind of operating solo just because Cass wasn't really behind diving into all this. She wanted to leave well enough alone. And so Naomi, now that she doesn't have Ethan, Naomi calls Cody and says, hey, I have things that I need to tell you. I need to tell somebody. And so Cody comes to her aid like he always does. And so he picks her up and she starts asking Cody about Jessie Walker. Naomi reveals that she knows where her remains are. And Cody starts acting a little weird about it. And he says, you need to show me. You need to show me where her body is. I just want to see her one last time. And it's a little unnerving to hear him that way. And this is where we find out that Jessie Walker died because of an interaction she had with Cody. Cody was a little brokenhearted over the fact that Jessie chose the mayor over him. And so now that the mayor pretty much dumped her, Cody was maybe hoping that there was a chance for them to kind of have their fling, have their romance, whatever it was he hoped that was going to happen. Obviously that didn't happen. She is going ballistic. She's really upset about the mayor breaking things off with her. She's also very drunk. She ends up falling down, hitting her head on the rock, and Cody is so frustrated with her at this point that he just leaves her there, which is how she ends up crawling into the woods, crawling under that boulder, and then just passing away there, and then left there for 20 plus years. So, present time, we are in the woods with Cody and Naomi is now scared of Cody, which is a new reaction for her because she's always seen Cody as her savior. So she's in the woods and he's trying to explain himself and trying to help her see, hey, it was just an accident. It wasn't meant to happen that way. All of a sudden, Cass shows up and she says, hey, Cody, what are you doing? And Naomi is really put off by that. Clearly, there was some plan in place with Cass and Cody that did not include Naomi. And so Cass asks that Cody give them a minute. She wants to talk to Naomi by herself. We find out all these years later that Cass was such an incredible manipulator that she actually manipulated Liv into believing that the goddess Persephone required an ultimate sacrifice in order to bring peace and happiness to the rest of their lives. She said that if Liv didn't kill Naomi, that there would be bad juju, people would start dying, her family would start dying. So she really brainwashed Liv into doing these atrocious things, which this was a crazy twist in the story. I had no idea that Liv was the one this entire time, 11 years old, stabbing Naomi, who is also 11 years old. We also find out that Cass was very jealous of the relationship that Liv had with Naomi, and part of that was the reason why she had made up this game, and she wanted Liv to make the ultimate sacrifice. And oh my gosh, super crazy. So now we're in this place where Naomi knows everything. Cass wants to kill her. Cody comes back and Cody says, no, we can't kill her. And Cass is like, this is literally the only option. She knows too much. She's going to turn us in. This will be the end of our lives. Think of your family. I have a little girl. We need to kill her. So originally, Cass is going to shoot Naomi. They make her sit over a tarp so that way they don't get blood everywhere. But Cass has a difficult time executing. She can't pull the trigger. Cody says, hey, you know what? I got this. You don't need blood on your hands, like you said. You have a little girl. I can handle it. So he takes the gun, and when you think he's about to shoot Naomi, he turns around and shoots Cass right through the throat. Woo! Oh my goodness. Now, in Naomi's scramble to save herself, she doesn't know if Cody's going to spare her, but she's thinking probably not. He just killed someone to keep his secret and to protect her kind of in a way, but she doesn't know how far that generosity extends. At first, she tries to tell Cody, you didn't have a choice. You did what you had to do. You saved me. Again, I understand. And so she's building that rapport with him, but she realizes with Cody's behavior that it's probably not going to work out in her favor. So she gets up and she bolts, hoping that he's not going to shoot at her. But alas, he does. He shoots at her. He misses twice, I believe. He gets her on the third try right through the back. It's like, this poor woman can't get a break. Oh my gosh. She falls face down in the dirt. Cody is closely approaching. She can hear him, and you can tell he feels remorse. He feels regret. He's like, my gosh, he didn't want to do it. But she flips over and she sees that in his grief, he's kind of dangling the firearm, the weapon. And so she sees an opportunity and she does not miss her opportunity. She grabs the gun, turns it on him, and fires at him. She unfortunately had her fingers over the barrel, so she lost a couple of her fingers, but she shoots him in the leg, which allows her enough time to crawl away. And fortunately, she's very close to that cave where Persephone resides. So she crawls over there, jumps in, thinks that she's going to die there, realizes that she has the phone still, her phone in her pocket. She pulls it out to her most recent contacts. She sees that Ethan was the last person she had dialed and talked to on the phone. She calls Ethan asking for help. Luckily, we don't know at the time, but Ethan is already in the woods with the police looking for her. So, wouldn't you know it, they actually locate her under the boulder along with Persephone, and they find her in time to save her life. So this woman is indestructible, I guess. But they take her back, they fix her up, and this time she tells the entire truth of what happened. And by the way, I may have forgot to mention, but it was Cody who hired the personal investigator to follow her. It honestly wasn't anything nefarious, but it just kind of got out of hand at one point in time. And so Cody is an enigmatic figure in this book. You want to like him, but it turns out that you feel kind of disgusted when you end up liking him at all. But the end of the story ends very well. She heals up. She makes amends with her father. Their relationship has been strained for a lot of years, but she helps him clean up his home because he's a hoarder and has a bunch of junk. And then Ethan goes MIA for months. I want to say it's 10 months. And he finally comes back. And she is a little bit offended that he didn't see her in the hospital when she was recovering. It took him 10 months to find her, and she kind of questions him as to why. And he says, well, I didn't know if you wanted to see me or not. And she goes, honestly, I didn't know if I wanted to see you either, so I guess that worked out. But it kind of hints that they maintain some kind of relationship. I don't know if it's a friendship or if it's an actual romantic relationship. Before she found out that he was AJ Jr., they were sleeping together, and she had considered whether or not she wanted to be in a romantic relationship with this man. And so we don't know what goes on from there, but she does heal, and now that everything's out in the open, she is able to move forward with her life. Persephone's remains were found and returned to her family after all of these years. She ends up creating art out of her pain, which is very therapeutic for her. It was something that her ex-boyfriend told her to do a long time ago. She was always super resistant to it, but she ends up doing that, making a business out of it. So crazy book, What Lies in the Woods, Kate Alice Marshall. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. Leave me some comments. Did you enjoy this book? Is this something that you would find that you would enjoy? Subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in, and happy reading.